dictionary definition of music is the art of arranging sounds in time through the elements of melody, harmony, rhythm, and timbre. Low Pass Filter is a show about the nature of this thing we call music, how it functions in people's lives, how it's contextualized by society, and why we find certain music meaningful. This is Low Pass Filter. Hello and welcome to Low Pass Filter. This is a show about music and what it means in our lives. My name is Mateo Noche. I'm here with Low Pass Filter co-host Bandon Wayne. Welcome, Bandon.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome me. Welcome us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, another fun show. So, as regular viewers know, we switch back and forth on topics every month, and this month, it is your topic. So, what is your topic for today?
Well, it is a topic that I felt like it was high time we brought it up. What is funk? Let's talk about funk. Let's get into funk and funk it up on this topic.
Well, I guess we probably should say that there are two white guys talking about funk, and the way I look at it is like I'm a dilettante.
Sure.
I know what I like. I don't necessarily know what it is, but I know what moves me, and I know what's moved me all these different years.
I suspect you probably have some funk in your soul.
I like to think so.
You feel the funk.
I do feel it.
Yeah.
I do feel it, but we don't hold ourselves out as experts.
No, generally not. Enthusiast. I don't like to call myself an expert on anything,
right.
But we're music nerds.
Yes.
So we like to deep dive into these different musical genres and whatnot.
Well, I think as always, we should probably define terms. So funk is African American music form, started out in the mid-1960s, mixture of soul, jazz, R&B, de-emphasizing the melody and chord progressions and focusing on a strong rhythmic groove and with a lot of bass line and a lot of drums, and also uses extended chords for you musicians out there, like 13 flat sevens or flat nines.
Yes. Yeah. Not knowing music theory, I in my research, I saw a reference to that and I went,
yeah,
okay,
I love
that is what it is.
Chords they're delicious.
Yeah, I don't know that theory, but made sense to me. There's some complex stuff going on in there.
And of course, why is it called funk? And I can tell you. I'm going to tell you right now.
Please do.
Well, funk originally, the word refers to a strong odor.
Yeah.
Not an order, but an odor. And so, you'll often hear funk musicians say, put some stank in it.
Yeah.
And so that's where it is. They got the stanky funk notes.
Yeah, that's a fun aspect of it. Sometimes when the music is real funky or it's got a real strong groove, you might say it's nasty. Mm-hmm. I like the idea that we have terms like this that we kind of grew up with or we've known for a long time, and we just kind of accept it as the term. And so it becomes something that we just kind of innately or inexplicably understand. It's funky.
Yeah.
It's got funk to it,
Well, the thing about funk is all roads lead to James Brown.
Lead to or from.
Yeah. So he gives other people credit for coming up with the feeling, the funk feeling. But he really developed a signature groove. And as we were talking about before we started, with the emphasis on the downbeat. Mm-hmm. In other words, on the one.
Yeah.
And you'll hear him call that out in many, many songs.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about is the first beat of every measure, emphasis on the first beat of every measure, and with swung 16th notes, kick sounds on the first two beats, and then answered by off beats by the snare.
Yeah.
So that is kind of the
Yeah.
James Brown funk sound.
And that part of it's referred to as syncopation. The funk groove has a lot of syncopation in there, but always really strong on the one or the first down beat.
Like for example, reggae is on the two.
Yes, yeah.
So that's a different feel.
Which can still feel funky in its own way.
It can.
Yeah. There's that specific sort of core element to it, but there's something else, maybe more just
The stank.
the stank. It's just something innate in it that you can't help but say that's funky, man.
Yeah. Well, and since we're talking about emphasis on the bass lines, we should probably talk about a couple of people that really put it out there.
I know who you're gonna say.
The ones I have collected down here are Bernie Edwards, who's in a band called Chic,
Okay, yeah.
and of course Bootsy Collins.
Bootsy,
You
of
can't
course.
go anywhere without Bootsy, who played in James Brown Band and also in Parliment, who we'll talk about in a little while. And then Robert Kool Bell, who was in Kool and the Gang.
Yep, yeah.
And so, these guys kind of developed this repetitive patterns, locked in grooves, and the slapping and popping
Yes.
of a bass sound that you.
But when you're talking about that, then we have to mention Larry Graham,
Larry Graham, yeah.
pioneer of the slap bass style.
Graham Central Station, Sly and the Family Stone.
Yeah, came out of Sly and the Family Stone and is credited with inventing the slap.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to see Larry Graham playing with Prince,
Oh, gee.
which was pretty amazing. And Cynthia, the trumpet player from Sly and the Family
Yep.
Stone, was also there.
Wow,
Also
wow.
Carlos Santana. It was a great night. But I feel super fortunate, and I think he has passed on since then.
Yeah, I would
Sorry,
think so.
Larry, if you're still with us. But yeah, definitely towering. Then of course we move on to the drummers, and if you can't say funk without saying Clyde Stubblefield.
Clyde Stubblefield, man. The most sampled drummer in hip hop.
That's right. Perhaps one of the most sampled musicians on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And Jabo Starks, who also played. These guys both played in James Brown's bands at different times.
Yeah.
David Garibaldi, amazing drummer with Tower of Power.
Tower of Power, all right.
Was kind of also developed this thing called ghost notes.
Yeah.
And very much into the rim shot kind of flavor of doing the funk thing. And a lot of hi-hat splash accents was another one of his kind of
Another guy that you would credit with that kind of ghost note style is Bernard Purdie.
Right.
Who isn't necessarily associated strictly with funk, but he was a funky drummer for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then George Brown, who was Kool and the Gang's drummer, amazing drummer. And finally on my list, I have James Diamond Williams, who was in the Ohio Players.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about them later when we get to talking about our list.
Yeah.
Then another kind of, I guess, signature of funk was the chicken scratch, or the kind of chank guitar.
Yeah.
Got put in a lot of that. And of course, Jimmy Nolan, who played with James Brown, was kind of the originator of that, or at least he gets credit for it. Don't write us if there's somebody else that, but
yeah, I don't know that name specifically off the top of my head.
He was in the Famous Flames.
Okay,
He played in bands up to the 70s with James Brown. Ernie Isley.
Oh man,
Another towering funk guitarist. And then I had Eddie Hazel from Funkadelic.
Yeah, Eddie Hazel takes funk into another place. Um, I'm sure could play some of that funk guitar style, but was also the aspect, or at least a strong component in that psychedelic aspect of Funkadelic, and essentially could play psychedelic guitar like Jimi Hendrix.
Oh yeah.
So Funkadelic, while being one of the main originators of a real heavy funk sound, is also a rock group.
Yes.
Yeah,
I had been recently, I own Maggot Brain on an LP, and so my LPs don't get hauled out quite as much, and I finally bought the CD.
Yeah.
I know, physical media. I'm an old guy, what can I say? But anyway, I got that out, and I had that like on my CD player for like a week, just listening to it. And you're right. That is a rock record in a lot of ways. There's a couple of funky songs on it, but it's a brilliant rock record. We're talking about Maggot Brain, 1971.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, you could add Free Your Mind and Your Rear Will Follow.
Yeah. And then finally, as long as we're running down the instruments, we might have talked about the clavinet.
There you go. Yeah.
Which is also a signature funk instrument. And I don't think anybody wielded that better than Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder. It's interesting. I won't go into the story, but clavinet seems to be coming up a lot in my musical listening these days. Stevie Wonder, man.
And finally, horns. And nobody did it better than the JB horns. Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley. Fred Wesley is just like, talk about the stank, I could just listen to him play trombone all day long. It's it just goes down so well.
And one thing I love about those guys is I really feel that they were very skilled jazz musicians. And so they bring a dimension to playing funk, especially the instrumental side of it. It's not jazz, it's not funky jazz, it's funk, but there's jazz in there, and I just love it. And then, think about how that horn section was used in so many Public Enemy grooves,
right.
So then when you listen to Public Enemy and you go back to those JB horns, you get this other perception of what it was they were doing to create these just sort of I don't know what the best word is, just extremely exciting funk lines,
Yeah. Well, before we get into our list, I should just tell everybody out there that you can find our Spotify playlists in the description below. You can follow along when we talk about these songs if you're not familiar with them, or if you just want to hear them again, which why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You can hear what we're talking about. So let's get into the list. Let's talk about what we have.
Sure, man.
And so why don't you start off?
I
see that we mentioned James Brown. And
Yeah.
I see that you had a number of James Brown songs in there.
I kind of wish I had a more well-rounded list. I did get some of the most important kind of touchstone artists, but like we were talking about before we started rolling, there's just so much. It's a big world of music, but
you could almost like throw a dart at the map of James Brown's funk, and land on something funky.
Exactly, yeah. So it looks like I have 4 James Brown tunes in my Spotify playlist here, but I just kept wanting to click add.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the best example to pick? It could be any number of songs. So Papa's Got a Brand New Bag that's cited as a very early important example of James Brown kicking off the funk.
1965.
Oh man, yeah. We're not even to the late 60s and it was funky as heck. And then for me, Papa Don't Take No Mess and Get on the Good Foot those are songs that to me are just funky, stanky funk tunes. And then I threw Funky Drummer in there because that does highlight.
Or Clyde Stubblefield.
Yeah.
Well, I likewise, I had James Brown. I picked a couple of later examples, sort of into the '70s era, and the one that just seemed obvious to me is "Make It Funky."
Make It Funky, man.
Which had Maceo and Fred Wesley on it, and then "I'm a Greedy Man." So "Make It Funky" is kind of a slow funk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And "I'm a Greedy Man" is an up tempo,
indeed,
funky thing. But I was talking earlier about James Brown saying he wasn't the originator of funk, and he credited a guy named Chuck Connor, who was in the Upsetters,
Okay.
as being the first person to put funk into the rhythm of rock and roll.
Interesting.
And I think probably his first, James Brown's first really funky thing, wasn't on my list, but of course it's a great song and it kind of put him on the map, was Out of Sight, which was 1964.
Okay.
But he kind of had a recipe for funk.
Yeah.
And he, went on through the years, and you could just go on and on the list. I didn't put these on my list, but I had Cold Sweat and '67, Mother Popcorn from 1969.
I was thinking Mother Popcorn.
And Sex Machine.
Yeah.
Stay on the scene like a sex machine, what James Brown did, I think, is he changed the upbeat to the downbeat.
Okay.
Right. And really, it's just as simple as that,
Yeah.
And everyone else has kind of followed along in his wake since then.
Yeah. I would think the Isley Brothers have to be early important group. I put the Meters in there as a important early group, bringing funkiness. But if you're going back to 64, 65, that's pretty early.
Yeah.
It starts to get really, really moving.
Well,
the
the Meters,
60s.
you had Hand Clapping Song.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's a whole different branch of funk, the New Orleans branch of funk. So you've got the Neville Brothers and the Meters, and they have their own kind of feeling. And, if musicians are in the know, would say, we're going to play this New Orleans style.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so there's a differentiation between that.
Yeah. And New Orleans is definitely got a history of funky music, going back before funk was even thought of. There's a funkiness to music from that area and the culture there. But then Ohio is a hot spot for funk. It's interesting. Yeah, the Meters are really important to me because I feel like they brought something to it that helped define the idea of funk music, even if it was essentially started by James Brown. And the Isleys too, they were a soul R&B group who had their own funky vibe going on, and ultimately they became big in defining the funky vibe too.
Well, you had a Hand Clapping Song. For the Meters, I had Cissy Strut, which is just like a textbook funk song.
It is.
If you looked in the dictionary, you would see the Meters playing.
Yeah. I think I put Hand Clapping Song because that one really that one's always appealed to me. The groove to that one. Yeah.
Well, this probably seems like a good time to take a little break. We're going to go away for a minute, and we'll be back with some more Low Pass Filter. This is Low Pass Filter, Mateo, Bandon, talking about funk.
I was looking down at my list. I'm
Yeah.
trying to.
I have my list is not really in any specific
Yeah,
order.
that's what I was doing.
I didn't try and go, chronologically or anything. It was
Yeah, I
just,
apologize. I was scanning it trying to see if there is a chronology to my list, and it's not really there. But anyhow,
yeah. I had and I put Average White Band in there, who are Scots. They're all white. But there is an actual soul community, an R&B community in Glasgow and other spots in Scotland.
yeah,
In fact, I was trying to think of this morning. I didn't get a chance to look it up, but there was this really great documentary about Scottish soul and Scottish.
interesting. Okay.
Do you remember that? Do you remember?
No,
You know what I'm
no.
talking about?
Huh.
All right. Well, I'll run it. I'll find out what it is. I'll put it in
Cool,
here.
cool.
But, so there's actually a tradition of these guys. But Pick Up the Pieces, it's got to be one of the funkiest songs
Yeah,
ever.
they do have. They
And
do
on
have
the
fun.
reissue of that album, there's a live version that they recorded at Montreux that just slays. It's amazing.
Man. So we can't really get into it, but that's intriguing that somehow funk got to that area and turned on a bunch of people.
It resonated with the
Yeah.
Scots. That's right. A wee bit.
Man.
Next up, I had Parliment.
Yeah.
And Parliment or Funkadelic or Parliment Funkadelic, which
P-Funk, as it
P-Funk
later was truncated to
which was sort of a
cover all of it.
collective of members of Parliment and
yeah.
Funkadelic, and kind of all revolved around George Clinton. Bootsy Collins, of course, in the band at various points, but it was sort of a revolving cast of people.
Yeah. So originally called the Parliment.
Right. And they were
And
sort of a
then-
doo-wop group.
Yeah, they were coming out of that
Yeah.
R&B and doo-wop world, and then what happens to George Clinton? He gets turned on,
Yeah.
gets together with
The
somebody
60s
like
happened.
yeah,
Yeah.
gets together with somebody like Eddie Hazel,
Mhm.
and kind of comes up with this acid rock funk thing as Funkadelic, only to later return to being called Parliment.
Right. Yeah, I have super groovalistic profunkistication, I think is how it goes.
Why did you pick that one?
It's just an incredibly funky tune.
yeah.
Hard to say, but easy to listen to off of the Mothership connection.
Uh-huh.
And then I also had Up For The Downstroke.
Yeah.
And also we should mention, Bernie Worrell, who was a big part of all that.
Oh, yeah.
We had Boosie and George and Bernie, who made up various iterations of Parliment Funkadelic.
And you mentioned Stevie Wonder on the clavinet. Bernie Worrell is probably a master of all electric piano stuff, analog synthesizer stuff. He is credited as pioneering and furthering the use of analog synthesizers. And one, namely, that he employs masterfully into this stuff is the Moog.
Right.
Along with other stuff.
ARP 2600s he used the RMI pianos.
Yeah,
That's how I kind of had a signature piano sound on a lot of that stuff. Which
sure
is
he
an
was-
early, for those of you who are going, what's an RMI piano? It's a early, not a digital piano, but an early electric piano that kind of approached an acoustic sound,
Interesting. Okay.
but very distinctive.
Yeah, and
Very
I'm not
distinctive.
positive what he's using. He is in the pantheon of Moog
Yeah.
experimenters, but there is a signature Bernie Worrell synthesizer sound in Funkadelic and Parliment, and that you'll also hear on his work with Talking Heads and some other stuff. So yeah, we talk about the drums and the bass. kind of being your foundation of funk, at least as far as that feeling of the groove. But think about what he was doing with keyboards. Like
Yeah.
I mean, adding that to this concept of funk, it's just far out. It's like outer space stuff, man.
What else do you have on your list?
Well, I threw down a few from Funkadelic. A couple of them are off the Cosmic Slop album, and you know, some people lean towards Maggot Brain, some people lean towards Free Your Mind. Cosmic Slop was the one that first blew my mind when I was young, and the song Cosmic Slop is just this really heavy, for lack of a better word, cosmic funk tune. And then Nappy Dugout, to me, it has more of this kind of down home, comforting feeling to it. And then Hit It and Quit It off of Maggot Brain just seemed like a real, just real kind of funk stomper. But then you mentioned Kool and the Gang. And I don't always think of them as being an early funk, foundational funk group, because they kind of had, like some of these artists had more than one sort of era or iteration of the group. And so they had, later 70s pop hits and stuff. But Jungle Boogie just seemed like kind of a good song to jump off from with those guys.
I also had them on my list, and I had Funky Stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Parts 1 and 2. And then the other song that it just gets me all the time is Hollywood Swingin'.
Oh, man, yeah.
Which is just like amazing.
Yeah. Funky Stuff is great, and I do love Hollywood Swingin' too. Yeah. Those are singles I have in my collection.
Yep. In fact, I have the 45 Funky Stuff, Part 1, Flip It Over, Part 2.
And hey, man, maybe for a brief moment, talk about the Part 1 and Part 2 in the world of funk.
Right.
Trying to release those singles when you've got a 5-6 minute funk jam.
Yeah.
And James Brown.
3.5 minutes.
Yeah. And James Brown was the master of Part 1 and Part 2, I think.
And Part 3 and 4 and 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. And sometimes the A side to one of those singles might have a little bit more vocal phrasing, and the B side might be a little bit more of the instrumental with just a couple of James Brown's signature, grunts on it, as he called it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I threw down Brick House by Commodores.
Okay.
That's pretty classic. Not early funk, but that's a song that would be on any classic funk compilation. And have to talk about Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I didn't put them on the list, but really, I figured that they would come up because they're progenitors.
Yeah.
They're right there.
Yeah.
And Sly Stone was a genius, a crazy
Yeah.
genius.
Yeah.
Still is. Hey, Sly, still out there.
Indeed.
Wish he was still making music. But yeah, so you had Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself.
Yeah. I go to that song all the time, and there's plenty of other great ones. And maybe some of their impact on music wasn't only about being a funk group. They were very significant during psychedelic era, the Vietnam protest era, which is all the same time frame, but they touched people and the musical landscape in multiple ways. But like we talked about, Larry Graham on bass, foundational in the feel of funk.
And they were also an interracial band.
Yeah,
which
indeed.
was not a thing at
Their
the
funky
time.
drummer was a white guy.
Right.
Who kept it
was
funky.
Just, it was either people, we've talked about pigeonholes in the past and put people in baskets, but Sly did not want to be in a basket. He wanted
and they were out of the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And Tower Power was out of the same area, and they were
also
multiracial. Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was remarkable. I just know Sly as, from my childhood, just being on the radio all the time,
Yeah.
and just like Hot Fun in the Summertime, just really, you know, that was my summertime song,
That's
and
great.
really
Yeah.
evocative of when I
Dance
hear it
to the
now on the
music.
radio.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very evocative of getting out of school and
Okay.
goofing off,
Nice. I wish I would have had Sly in that era. Well, I
Yeah.
could have, but we were probably listening to Guns N' Roses or something. Yeah, dance to the music. Yeah, Sly's music transcends, as do most of these artists, but they're important in the history of funk, but yet transcend it. Thank you for letting me be myself again. That song really connects with me. To me, it's about reveling in the, the space that you may have to just express yourself however you want and be grateful for the life you have.
A lot of joy in that.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of joy.
And if you ever watched a live clip of them playing that, we won't go into Sly's predilection for things to affect his mood, but he just is in his zone, smiling, playing his little funky guitar on that, and I've gone back to that clip on YouTube so many times. Well, there's multiple ones, but I don't know what it is. Just seeing him play that song, I want to thank you for letting me be myself again.
I had on my list. I had a couple of people. You mentioned people that had different eras, and so I had the Bar-Kays.
Oh man, yeah.
Which were Otis Redding's backing band, and most of them died in the airplane crash.
Oh, okay.
A couple of guys. One guy was on another plane, another guy was ill or something and was not on the plane.
Yeah.
And so they had their whole career backing Otis, and then they were reformed in '76 and went on to have a whole other funk career.
Yeah, and they ended up kind of taking funk into this new, more synth-driven era that I like to refer to as electro funk.
Yeah, Larry Dodson became the leader of the band in 1976. And the song I had was something called Boogie Bodyland.
All right.
Just always liked the feel of that. War, the Cisco Kid.
Yeah, did I put, did I not put War on my list? I think I left them off.
Yeah.
Unintentionally. Yeah, well, what War song would I put? Cisco Kid, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Some people might even just go to Lowrider because it's just kicks in with that.
Slipping into darkness.
Yeah.
There are just so many great songs, and they had that very interesting sound, which was kind of a combination between they had this thing going with the harmonica and I think a tenor sax that played the same notes.
Oh,
to a unison thing.
Interesting, yeah.
And a lot of it very, very distinctive. Why Can't We Be Friends?
And they also brought in some kind of more Afro-Latin flavor to it. And another group that did that really well was a group called Mandrill, which I didn't put on the list. They're a little bit deeper, into the overall discussion of funk music. But War. Got to talk about War, of course. Who then also teamed up with Eric Burden from the Animals and did this amazing.
Spill the Wine.
Yeah, they created their own new vibe with him.
I had, let's see, I had the Beastie Boys. I know.
All right.
I know. But there's one song in particular that is particularly funky called Shake Your Rump.
Yes, that
off
is.
of Paul's Boutique. And you can tell by who they sampled for that song. They sampled some very funky people, like Foxy and And the Sugar Hill Gang got sampled. The B-Boys are in that song. But there's a Moog line in there. It's just the funkiest thing that ever got recorded. And I understood they paid like $250,000 for samples for that record alone. And you basically couldn't make that record now.
No. And that's interesting because there were other artists at the same time sampling who didn't pay up front. And it really hurt them pretty badly.
Well, there's a famous case, and I'm blanking on who filed it, somebody we'd all know, that changed that whole thing and made it so you had to clear things first, you had to pay for them first.
I'm not sure what the one, if there is one case that did that, but I know De La Soul got sued by the Turtles. And there was probably a lot more of that. I think once that started, then it probably snowballed.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of lawyers calling up record labels.
Right.
Hey, anybody you want to sue?
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah.
Anyhow, I mean, hip hop probably would not exist without sampling funk music.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there's Clyde Stubblefield.
Yeah.
It's all over so many hip hop records.
He was
Beastie Boy records.
Yeah, he was, and interestingly, he seemed to be really good natured about it. Specifically, knowing that he didn't see a dime for most of that usage of his stuff, but he just kind of seemed to look at it like, well, I influenced this stuff. But without me, this wouldn't have been happening. But I'll just take that. And, but yeah, the Beastie Boys on Paul's Boutique. A mosaic of samples.
Right.
The most arduous production of sampling music ever, but it worked to brilliant effect. So you went a little farther. I kind of hung around the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah.
What other kind of far out funk examples you got in there?
Well, I had, we talked about the Isleys and Ernie Isley, and I had That Lady, parts 1 and 2.
Okay.
Also had that 45,
Nice.
which Ernie kind of pioneered using the Mutron phase shifter.
Okay.
And so that's a very signature guitar sound for him in that song especially. But then I had Prince.
Yeah.
Let's Work off of the Controversy record, which is a pretty funky record actually. Not that all of Prince's records weren't funky, but that one was resonated with me.
Yeah. Prince was funky.
Yeah.
At some point, I think he talked about that in his music. My name is Prince. But he was so brilliant at blending funk, rock, but funk and pop, making very commercially popular pop music, but having that funk injection in there, that funk basis. The dude could dance like James Brown.
Yes, he could.
He could play like Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Hazel.
High heels.
Yeah.
I saw him at the O, like 2 years before he passed away. And it is like in the top 3 concerts that I've ever seen in my life. Carlos Santana jumped up and did the most un-Carlos Santana solo I've ever seen.
Wow.
He did like this noise solo in one of the songs, which, Carlos Santana just, he has this very signature way of playing guitar that, in my opinion, hasn't evolved much since the 1960s, but fair enough. Can't argue with success. He, and it was just like, how did Prince coax that out of him? And Prince did a lot of coaxing, great performances out of a lot of different types of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a huge, towering figure in music, and what a loss to the world to not have him anymore.
Yeah.
I'll give one more, and then we'll take a quick break. Rufus and Chaka Khan.
Yes,
Tell Me
indeed.
Something Good. Was very funky, and Rufus, of course, was Rufus Thomas, a very funky man.
And that's an interesting group because Shaka gets referred to as the Queen of Funk.
Right.
They were a group together. It wasn't as if she was, a guest or apart from them in status necessarily. Of course, she went on to a solo career. But Rufus as a band was incredible. Just great musicianship. Also a multiracial group.
Yep.
Very important funk group who also could take it into the mainstream, into the world of popular music. Also could fit into the disco realm as well. And rock, they're brilliant. I happen to be a huge Chaka Khan fan, so
yeah, how can you not?
Every Rufus and Chaka Khan, and then solo Chaka records, I have all those. Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to take another quick break. You're watching Low Pass Filter. We're going to go away for a minute, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Low Pass Filter. Mateo Noche with Bandon Wayne. Do this every month.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about funk. Bring on the funk, make it funky.
It's funky. I think that was a song you cited.
Yeah. You had Marvin Gaye.
Yeah. Not somebody I associate as much with the world of funk, but he certainly could have some funkiness laid down. And I put the song "Got to Give It Up." Another example, is a soundtrack he did called "Trouble Man."
Oh yeah.
That's got some heavy funk vibes and
atmospheric.
Atmospheric.
Yeah.
That's a good word for it. Yeah. And I think Marvin would be a good example, although, most of these artists from the 60s and early 70s were also coming from a place of a new black consciousness of that era. Post-civil rights and Vietnam was happening. And so I think Marvin really is in that mix of making music that was specifically expressing a lot of what was going on culturally at that time, and so there's where you have like Parliment or the Meters maybe even or the Isley Brothers. You get like a lot of upbeat, joyful, happy funk. A lot of Marvin Gaye's funkiness was in the kind of heavier
social commentary. Yeah.
So I think he's good to have in.
And then we mentioned, kind of alluded to earlier in the show, was Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
Who his first 4 albums, we've talked about this before, just seminal.
Yeah.
Not that he didn't go on to do good things later, but and was great as Little Stevie Wonder before he.
So we're talking about the adult Stevie Wonder,
right? We're talking about
as he
the
grew up out of
artist Stevie Wonder, But Inner Visions, Music of My Mind. What's the other two?
Man, there's Songs in the Key of Life. Right. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Talking Book.
Yep, Talking Book. Yeah. A lot of funkiness in there. A lot of that clavinet stuff happening, and he was doing it all himself. Really, with he had some backup singers, but he was playing the drums. He was playing the guitar. He was playing the keyboards. He was playing the bass.
He had musicians there to work with, and certainly when he played live and stuff, he could only play keyboard and sing, but it was known that in the studio he would be laying down all the parts, and
which Prince kind of took on that thing too as well. But there is a great clip of him in that era with a band playing some of the songs, and it is so hot.
Yeah,
it's just off the charts. You think of Stevie as kind of sunny and fun and that sort of thing, but it was just like super aggressive, not in a mean way, but just like really leaning into the material.
That's a good way to put it.
In a way that the records are genius and they're wonderful, but this was I would have loved to have heard a live album out of some of that stuff of him playing with these musicians.
I feel like that clip that you're referring to, we've seen it over. It's like it's been around for a long time now. You just look on YouTube. I don't know where I first saw it, but isn't it like they're in a sound studio kind of room? And and that was a good way to put it, leaning into it. Like, what happens in that moment where they go, this is what we're doing. And then it just full on, this is the sound, this is the attitude. And they all just came so hard with it. And there's nothing vapid about Stevie Wonder tunes.
I had kind of I don't know, they may not be obscure. They're actually still, I was surprised when I went and looked them up, they're still performing. Was a band called Brick.
Yeah,
They had a big hit in the United States with a song called Dazz.
Yep.
D-A-Z-Z, which was hit number 3 in the pop charts back in 1976. But the song that I know is from their self-titled album called Dusick.
Okay.
Which is very, very funky and very sunny and upbeat and fun.
I don't have that one. I do have the Brick album with Dazz in my collection.
Yeah,
that's a good one. That's one of those tunes that's like it's going to be on a top 20 funk collection or something that like you said got chart success and it's easily digestible funk tune, but it's good.
Yeah,
super good tune.
And then I see you had Bootsy.
I had to throw something by Bootsy in there. Bootzilla. I just kind of threw one out there. There are solo Bootsy records, and then Bootsy's been involved in lots of other projects since, working with James Brown and Funkadelic.
Did he play on the Tom Tom Club?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Probably. Yeah, been in other kinds of projects as well. I threw Superstition by Stevie Wonder, but there's a number of other tunes, and I think that's everything on my list. Curtis Mayfield.
Yes.
Coming out of he goes back to the doo-wop and R&B era, but he could get funky.
Yeah. I snuck one on. You probably didn't see this.
Did you add it?
I put one. I had to put them on because I just forgot about them completely. But Charles Wright in the 103rd Street Watts band, was, I have, somebody made me a dub of the record. I don't even have the art or anything to it, but I just love that record. Yeah, they made a lot of records, but this one in particular had the semi-hit, which I can't remember right now, but I will put
They
it.
do Express Yourself.
Yeah, Express Yourself.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah. And then Carl Douglas,
Okay.
Kung Fu
Yeah,
Fighting.
yeah. I love that too.
Yeah, good stuff. And, as you move into the more modern era, then you have people like Herbie Hancock.
Yeah, I thought about Herbie.
Headhunters.
The Headhunters album.
Yeah.
I thought about him because I think somehow with what the Headhunters did, also kind of like Bernie Worrell, his experimentation with synthesizers had to have a significant impact on funk music.
I think of them as modern funk.
Yeah, except what does that go back? Headhunters goes back to what, 73, 74 or something like that. Yeah. Goes back pretty far. But then when you take his album,
This Is a Drum.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the one that's titled after a Curtis Mayfield song. It's the one with Rocket on it. Future Shock.
Oh, right.
Yeah, on Future Shock. That's very funky stuff.
Yeah.
Rocket was the big hit that everybody heard, had an MTV video, but the rest of the album is this kind of, well, it's called Future Shock, but it's really kind of like future funk.
And, there's so many subgenres of funk. So there's synth funk, funk rock, new funk, avant funk. We should have put that in the art show. Boogie, electro funk, funk metal, G funk, which is kind of rap and funk, and timba funk.
I don't know what timba funk is.
I think it's like kind of Latin funk music. So
okay, yeah.
Referring to
I see.
funk with timbales.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. G-funk, that's actually descended from the Gap Band and this West Coast funk style that Dr. Dre and Ice Cube adopted into their sound. Snoop Dogg stuff. Yeah.
Any final thoughts about funk?
Man,
besides go out and listen to some funk?
Definitely go out and listen to some funk. I feel like my demeanor this morning is kind of betraying my actual deep interest in funk music. I listen to it all the time. I play my funk records all the time. But maybe I don't feel cool enough to like fully represent what funk is.
No, we're definitely not cool enough. I can tell you that right.
But deeply love it, and when that music connects with you, and when you're listening to it, it just feels like nothing gets better.
Right.
Nothing can make you feel as joyful. Nothing makes you feel like you want to dance as much as good funk music. So, yeah, hopefully our lists will inspire some further listening and investigation. And, yeah, maybe at some point we'll do a funk part 2 down the road.
Could be. There's a lot of funk to be mined. Well, come to the end of another one. I want to thank everybody for listening and watching to Low Pass Filter. If you be sure and like and subscribe to our channel, and if you have comments, you can get a hold of us at lowpassfilter2020@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time on Low Pass Filter.
Thanks for watching Low Pass Filter. You can contact the hosts at lowpassfilter2020@gmail.com. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified about future shows.